Why are people with ADHD more creative? Sometimes my mind feels like it's moving faster than I can keep up with. Thoughts rush in from every direction. Ideas about what I need to do, memories from years ago, random questions that don't even make sense, all colliding at the same time. It can be exhausting. I try to focus on one thing, but another thought interrupts, and then another, until it feels like I'm being pulled in every direction. But over time, I started to notice something. Buried in that chaos, there's something powerful happening. When my mind jumps from thought to thought, it's not just getting distracted, it's connecting things that at first seem like they have nothing to do with each other. I could be watching a documentary about the ocean, and suddenly, I'm thinking about a school project from 3rd grade. A few moments later, I'm wondering how astronauts sleep in space. It sounds random, but somehow those thoughts start to link together. Maybe I picture a floating bed design like a sea creature, and before I know it, I've come up with a whole idea for a futuristic underwater hotel. That's what an ADHD brain does. It connects dots that other people don't even see. While someone else might follow a straight path, my mind takes all the side roads, back alleys, and hidden trails. Sure, sometimes I get lost, but other times I stumble onto something amazing. An idea so fresh and different that it surprises even me. That's the spark of creativity. It's not that I'm trying to be creative. It's just that my brain doesn't like to stay in one place. It wanders, it explores, and it finds patterns in the middle of what looks like a mess. I've noticed that some of my best ideas come when I'm not even trying. When I let my mind run freely, when I stop fighting it, it starts creating. I might be doodling on a napkin or daydreaming in the shower, and suddenly a new concept for a project pops into my head. It's like my brain is always working in the background, mixing ideas together until something clicks. And when that happens, it's like a burst of energy. I can see the whole picture all at once, and I can't wait to bring it to life. Other people sometimes tell me I'm all over the place. I get that. I felt that frustration too. I try to force myself to think like everyone else, to stay on one topic and stick to one plan. But every time I do, it feels like I'm shutting off the part of me that's actually the most alive. My creativity doesn't come from sitting still and thinking in a straight line. It comes from letting my mind move the way it naturally wants to, jumping between ideas, blending them, and discovering something new along the way. That's why what some call distraction can actually be a gift. My racing thoughts, the same ones that used to make me feel like I was doing everything wrong, are the reason I've come up with ideas that stand out. They're the reason I've created things that made people stop and say, "How did you think of that?" Because I see the world differently. I don't just walk the same path as everyone else. I notice the cracks in the sidewalk, the patterns in the trees, the hidden doors no one else is looking for. And sometimes, those little details come together to form something completely new. So, what I used to think was a problem, my brain running wild, is actually the reason I can create things that feel different, that feel like me. I've learned that the way my mind jumps around isn't something I need to fix. It's something I need to trust, because in that whirlwind of thoughts, there's a kind of magic. It's where creativity lives. I've always felt this need to know more, like my mind can't ever fully settle, because there's always something else out there waiting to be discovered. It's not just about liking new things. It's this pull, this itch that won't go away. I'll hear one word in the conversation, and suddenly, I need to know everything about it. A random thought pops into my head, and I'm searching for answers before I even realize it. Sometimes, it's small, like wondering why flamingos are pink or how elevators are tested. Other times, it's big, like questioning why people think the way they do or what makes someone truly happy. That curiosity never stops, and it's like my brain is constantly reaching out, trying to gather every piece of the puzzle. I've noticed that when something grabs my interest, it's like I get locked in. I don't just skim the surface, I dive into it completely. I'll stay up way too late reading articles or watching videos because I need to understand every detail. What starts as a simple question can turn into hours of research, and before I know it, I've gone down this winding path, learning things I never planned to. It's not always useful in a moment, but later, those bits of knowledge somehow come together in ways I didn't expect. That's when I see it. how all those curious little side tricks actually fuel my creativity. I've realized that this curiosity makes me see the world differently. While other people might walk past something and not think twice, stop and wonder, why is that building designed like that? What happened if someone changed it? What's the story behind it? I can't turn it off. It's like the world is full of questions, and every one of them feels like a door leading somewhere new. And when I let myself follow those questions, I end up in places I never could have planned for, places where ideas start to grow. That's how some of the best creative moments happen. I might be exploring something just because it interests me, and then, out of nowhere, it clicks with an idea I had months ago. Suddenly, I'm creating something fresh, something that wouldn't have existed if I hadn't let my curiosity guide me. It's like gathering pieces of a puzzle without knowing what the picture is until, one day, it all comes together. That's why I've learned to trust that restless feeling, that hunger to know more. It's not a distraction. It's what leads me to ideas I never would have found otherwise. Even when people tell me I ask too many questions or that I get too caught up in random things, I know that's just how my mind works. I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm trying to understand. I want to see the world from every angle because that's where creativity lives. It's in those moments when I look a little closer, when I follow that strange thought instead of ignoring it. That curiosity, the kind that never rests, is what keeps my ideas alive. I've noticed that for me, the line between a great idea and a bad one is often blurry. I get an idea, and before I even stop to think if it makes sense, I'm already trying it. It's like there's this urgency, this need to see what happens. I know some people like to plan everything out, make sure it's perfect before they start, but my brain doesn't work like that. When I feel that spark, I just go. I don't always know where it'll lead, but standing still feels worse than failing. I'd rather try and mess up than do nothing at all. That's how I've found some of the best things I've ever created. I've started projects that seemed ridiculous at first, ideas that made no sense to anyone else, but I couldn't shake them, so I took the risk. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But even when it fell apart, I came out knowing more than I did before. I made things that broke halfway through, drawn things that looked terrible, written things that made me cringe the next day. But every single time, I learned something. Every time I failed, I found a piece of what would work next. I don't think I'm braver than anyone else. It's more like my mind doesn't stop long enough to be afraid. I get so caught up in the excitement of what could be that the fear of messing up gets pushed aside. It's only afterward that I sometimes look back and think, wow, that could have gone really wrong. But by then it's already done, and more often than not, it led me somewhere unexpected, somewhere good. That's the thing about risk. It's not just about being willing to fail. It's about realizing that failure isn't the end. It's part of how I create. I've found that when I take those leaps, I end up discovering paths that other people never saw because they were too careful to step off the main road. I've stumbled into new styles, fresh ideas, and better ways of doing things, not because I had a perfect plan, but because I was willing to fall a few times along the way. And when I fall, I don't stay down. I pick up whatever pieces I can, and I use them to build something new, something that feels even more mine. I've realized that creativity, for me, isn't neat or safe. It's messy and it's full of mistakes. But every wrong turn, every half-finished idea, every failure ends up feeding the next thing I make. It's all part of it. The risks, the stumbles, the moments where I think I've wasted my time. Those are the moments that teach me what's possible. And sometimes when I least expect it, they lead to something better than I ever imagined. There are moments when everything around me fades away, and it's like my mind locks onto one thing with a kind of power that doesn't feel normal. Time disappears, noise melts into the background, and nothing else matters except what I'm creating. It's not something I can control or switch on whenever I want, but when it hits, it feels like I could build an entire world in a single afternoon. I lose track of everything, eating, sleeping, even basic things like standing up, because my brain is so locked into the task that pulling away feels impossible. But in that intensity, I create things I didn't even know I was capable of. Ideas flow faster. My hands move without hesitation, and details that usually slip past me become crystal clear. What starts as a simple sketch turns into a piece of art with layers I didn't plan. A small idea for a story grows into pages filled with life. That deep focus isn't just rare, it's the place where some of my best work is born.
If you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like this, we prepared the next video especially for you. Click here to watch.